Today is part one of a two-part series that we're going to do. And Thursday. So Thursday is what we're going to be doing today in foundations and Thursday on in foundations is as a professional real estate agent, you got to be able to speak the language of real estate and the language of a home. And a lot of you have either, I mean, some of you may have never been homeowners before. Some of you may not be familiar enough to, it's just never been part of your wheelhouse to be able to talk about fascia boards and eaves and whether something is, some system is electrical or gas or whatever. So that's kind of the idea and what we're going to cover today. And it all came about through helping several of you fill out some of the dual entry forms as you're entering data in for a new listing. And I realized exactly how some of us just can't speak that language. So I want to give you guys a good foundational knowledge. Today we're going to talk about and use photographs to identify different elements and terminologies with an actual home. And then Thursday, we're going to do real world, no kidding, practical example. Okay, so we are going to be doing a field trip on site to a vacant home somewhere in the area. I don't know which one yet. I've got to scope that out this week, but we will find hopefully a vacant listing somewhere nearby the office here. And I will publish in advance the location, time frame, all that kind of good stuff. But it's roughly, just plan on roughly the same time on Thursday that we would normally do foundations at 10 o'clock. We are going to be probably much longer than a 30-minute Zoom session, so we will have no Zoom on Thursday, but we will be on site on Thursday. Okay, so stand by for more details on where and when. And then we will actually be in a home, and I actually want you guys to come, and you're going to do a little bit of homework ahead of time. And thank Jessica for this because it's her fault. She asked me if we knew the address so that she could research the house and have a whole list of questions. That's what I want you all to do. All right. So I'll have an agenda of things to be able to talk about while we're there, but I also want you guys to have your questions for me about, okay, what do you call that thing in the house? All right. And you can play stump the teacher if you want to. All right. All right, everybody. So today we're going to kind of cover just a basic foundational knowledge of home terminology. It's not intended to be 100%. You're not going to be an expert when we're done with this 30 minutes, but it's going to give you kind of a good broad brush foundational knowledge. Okay. And if you, I'm going to share my screen and we'll do this on screen, but if you want to, go to home or to workplace, and for the announcement for this morning's foundation, in the comments, I put an attachment there with the document that we're going to be reviewing here momentarily. And you can print this out. You can save it to your desktop or somewhere in your files to where you can reference it when you need to. Make sense? Any questions before we get rolling, y'all? Okay, I am going to share my screen, and I am going to be sharing this screen. Okay, y'all looking at a picture of a bay window? All right, so this is a document, for lack of a better term, call it glossary of home terms. I kind of stole this from various websites and used pictures and things and definitions. But this is some good basic knowledge. Again, my intention here is not to read you this entire document, but we're going to use this as kind of a sounding board and a conversation about different parts of a house. All right. So I think everybody probably knows what a baseboard is and maybe a base cabinet, but those definitions are right there. One of the things that's often not understood is batten. Does everybody understand that a batten is a vertical siding element of positioning a home that covers a seam? It's often used in something called board and batten construction, which I don't have a picture of, but I think most of you probably can visualize what I'm talking about. But it's basically characterized by vertical elements in a fascia or in a facade on a house. Okay. Bay windows. Everybody kind of should understand a bay window is usually got three faces to it, two angular pieces, and and it extends. The window extends out. It is often covered by a metal roof, similar to this one. This one looks like it's copper, or at least some sort of copper finish. I will be perfectly honest with you. It's rare that you see a bay window in Georgia done in stone like this particular property, but it's kind of interesting nonetheless. Anybody had any experience with bay windows, and what do they tend to do because of weather in the state of Georgia?
Fog up.
You do get fog in these windows, but you also get a lot of rot. Rotting window where the water will run down. Notice there's no gutters on this. So the water literally drips down, and it'll drip on the windowsill or a wood sill right here, and you will often see rotting wood down in the lower parts of a bay window. And if you've attended more than one home inspection, you'll know what to look for from that point forward. Okay. Everybody should understand kind of what a beam is. Does anybody know the difference between a bearing wall and a non-bearing load-bearing wall?
A load-bearing wall, it significantly supports the weight of the house or the structure. Non-load-bearing doesn't. You can easily remove it.
There you go. And are we qualified to make a determination of that?
No.
No, we are not. But you might, you need to kind of understand it, because people might go, oh, well, I love this kitchen, but it's not big enough. Maybe if I bust this wall out. Well, the first question is you need to determine if that's a load-bearing wall or not. Even a load-bearing wall can sometimes be removed, but there might be a little bit more involved in it. Okay. Bifold doors. Usually those are interior closet doors, two hinged panels that fold to one side of the opening. Anybody else have a love-hate relationship with bifold doors in homes? I'm the same way. How many laundry rooms in a hallway, in an upstairs hallway, have you seen with bifold doors that are falling apart or broken? Yeah, I'm right there with you. All right. Similar to a bay window is a box window. Okay. And that is depicted right here in this photograph. A box window doesn't have a window on the two angular sides. It literally just sticks out and creates some additional space within the home. That is a box window versus the bay window that we talked about up here, which has the window angled on the side. Does it make sense? Everybody seen these before? All right. Let's talk about casement windows. Does everybody, do you know the difference between a casement window and a sash window? I wish I had a picture of it, but I don't.
Casement windows are the ones that crank out and they kind of open like this.
Exactly. Yep. Casement windows have the crank at the bottom. Most windows in Georgia are going to be a sash type window, which, well, trying to see on that picture, it's hard to tell if that's a solid window or casement. There might be a crank right there in that picture, but I can't really tell. But most windows in Georgia are casement or are sash type, which are the typical type that open up and down and have the sashes that close upon each other. Okay. Cathedral ceiling. Everybody should understand the difference between a cathedral ceiling. Is this a cathedral ceiling, or what's the difference between a cathedral ceiling and a vault ceiling?
Vaulted ceilings have 2 levels, I guess. What you call it? I don't know.
So cathedral ceilings. This is a true cathedral ceiling, which has 2 peaks that come directly up to a crest in the middle. Okay, so a ridge pole or ridge down the middle going this way. A vaulted ceiling, in some of the contemporary homes, might just have one face that goes directly up, and it comes to a peak at the very top and meets a wall instead of 2 angles reaching this way. You know what? Let me do this. Now you can see me. Cathedral ceilings are going to be like this. A vaulted ceiling is going to be more like this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. That's a real technical term. This versus this, y'all. Sorry. Again, there's so many things. I didn't realize how much there was until I started trying to prepare for this and trying to get photographs for all these different little pieces and parts. Wow, lots of information here. Okay. So while we're looking at this, what would you call this room back here behind the glass?
Sunroom.
Sunroom. Yep. Conservatory. What kind of a window is this?
It's not a bay window,
It's
is
not a
it?
transom, is it?
Some might call that a transom window.
open it,
I was
yeah.
thinking more about the shape at the top with the arch of this. Typically, that's called a Palladium window. Quite often, you'll see something like this high on the home. Generally speaking, this type of window does not open in any way, shape, or form because, one, who's going to climb up there to open it? And so if you're looking at a house that has some of those, to Tracy's points, that sometimes you get that fog in between the windows, and if the windows have that fogging, they typically need to be replaced. Well, what you will frequently see in homes with Palladium windows, this arch type window high above an entryway, is one that fogs, but they never replace it. And does anybody know why? Because they are ridiculously expensive. Okay. The arch is, and the rounded portion of a window at the top has to be custom cut, and they are ridiculously expensive, and they take a long time when you order them. So if you have a home that has a fogged Palladium window somewhere in the home, it's typically a pretty long lead time and a pretty expensive proposition to get it replaced. Okay. Let's keep going. Okay, chair rail. You hear this term a lot. Chair rail is the actual board that goes around the room at the top. Okay, it is called a chair rail because if you were to take this chair and lean it up against the wall, theoretically that rail would prevent the back of the chair from marring up the wall, the plaster of the wall. Okay. What would you call, if the chair rail is this top portion depicted here with the little light green outline, what would you call this entire lower portion of this wall?
Wainscoting.
Good job. That is exactly right. Wainscoting. And depending on what part of the country you're from, if you go up to New England, it's going to be wainscoting. Okay. Let's talk about some other elements within this photograph. What do you see up here at the top? What would you call that term?
Coffered ceiling.
Well done. Everybody hear them? Coffered ceiling. Okay, so it is coffered because it has these recesses uh, into the ceiling with the grid pattern going across it. Okay. Oh, and that happens to be our next slide. Love this. Thank you. Great segue. Coffered ceiling is this element. Coffered ceilings are usually an element that you would see in higher end homes. And simply because it's expensive, folks. You know, think about all the millwork that goes into somebody cutting and making that little corner right there, painting it a different finish. You know, it's an expensive proposition, so it's a higher end home usually that have coffered ceilings. Okay. Crown molding is the molding that you see on the crown of a roof where the roof meets the wall. Okay. This is a great picture of it. And oh, by the way, what do we have here? More wainscoting, coating. All right. So if that where my cursor is at is chair rail, or not chair rail, is crown molding. Likewise, this is crown molding. What do you call this element up here above the dining room?
Tray ceiling.
Tray ceiling.
Tray ceiling is correct. Could also be a recessed ceiling, but tray ceiling is perfectly acceptable terminology. Okay, by the way, this is a sash type window as opposed to a casement window. So this bottom part, it will open up, and the top part, sometimes they will remain stationary. Sometimes, depending upon the window, they could also be moved down, and you can open it from above. But these two slide upon each other as opposed to a casement, which would have a hinge on one side and would open from the other side. Does that make sense? What do you call this grid pattern right here in a window? Anybody know? Starts with an M. These are
Matt.
called. Go ahead.
I was gonna say matte, but I was like, no, that's a color thing. Never mind.
These are actually called mullions. The grid that divides a window into multiple lights. Each one of these is called a light. The panes in the middle. The grid that divides that into that pattern, that is called a mullion, window mullion. And what's this part at the bottom of a window? We should all know that. That's a windowsill.
Sill.
There you go. Okay, dormer. Dormer has nothing to do with where you lived in college. That's a dorm. Dormer is this element in a type of home that sticks out of the roof. A projection of a vertical wall through a sloped roof plane with a window in it and its own roof tiles onto the home's main roof. Okay, so this is dormer style, or this is a dormer. Does anybody, trick question or additional question, what would you call this type of house? Somebody know?
Traditional.
Is it a cape?
This is traditional. What was the other answer I just heard, Tracy? Was that you?
Cape. I said a cape.
Yes, Leah. This is a Cape Cod house. This is a Cape Cod style of home, which is characterized by the use of dormers. And Cape Cod is basically the defining characteristic of a Cape Cod is it has a second floor, but the second floor is kind of disguised underneath of a roof line, which in order to maximize space and get light and air into the home, that's why they use these types of dormers. Okay. Any questions on that so far? Okay. Let's talk about eaves. I'm going to have to really move things along because we're not going to get very far with this. Eaves are this projection of the roof line out past the wall, and this general term is called an eave. Sometimes it's called an overhang. And does anybody know what the board is? This vertical board that projects out from the eave?
It's not the fascia board.
That is the fascia board. And what
Oh,
typically happens to fascia boards?
They rot out.
They get
They rot, and they almost always need painted in the state of Georgia. Okay, especially for a home that has real high roof lines like this, because nobody wants to go up there, y'all. I painted my house in Dallas before we moved recently, and I didn't want to paint those things either. I actually hired somebody to do that part while I did all the low stuff. Okay. The underneath of the eave, does anybody know what the term for the this face that's underneath of the eave?
don't remember.
It's called the soffit. The boards that go this way on the underside of that eave is called the soffit, and those are frequently prone to be needing painted and rotting out also. All right, and of course the element going down here we should all know as a gutter, and this part is called a downspout, and that is for channeling water away from the house, off of the roof, and theoretically away from the house. Okay. An elevation or an elevation view of the house is typically a view of the architectural model taken from the front, horizontally looking at the home like this. Okay. So that would be your elevation view of the home. We already talked about fascia. That's the horizontal board positioned above the eave. Okay, let's talk about a gable. A gable is anything, any part of the roof line that is triangular in nature, like this one. Okay, so on this house, you would have a gable end on the front. Guess what? You would also theoretically have a gable end on this side of the house as well as this side of the house based off of the appearance of it. So if you were looking from the left side or the right side, you would also have a gable end on that roof line. Okay. Okay, so a gambrel is also a very similar term, slightly different and easily confused. Gable, think triangle. Gambrel, think the old barn style. You'll see how this one has a slight bend to it. That is gambrel. Okay. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as a Dutch gambrel. This roof line is also gambrel. Notice what's on this face, this angled face of this steep roof line. It is actually shingles and composition shingles that are on a nearly vertical surface. That's kind of characteristic of a gambrel style roof. Okay. Anybody heard of that one before? We don't live in Arizona, so I don't think I've ever seen a gull wing roof anywhere in the state of Georgia. If it's very rare. I'm not going to cover that too deeply. We already talked a little bit about gutters. A hip roof is characterized by this little clipped portion of the roof line. So if that clip were not there, this would be what?
Gable.
A gable end, but because it's clipped off, it's technically a half hip roof. Okay, let's look at a full hip roof. This would be a full hip roof. Okay, notice how it's much more steep instead of just being clipped at the top with a half hip that little clipping there and that little clipping there, that's a half hip. This is a full hipped roof. Okay, frequently you'll see hipped roofs on ranches similar to this, which is very prevalent in Roswell. If you're doing business in Roswell, Alpharetta, a lot of homes like this. Okay, HVAC is a general term acronym for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment. So a lot of times those systems are combined. You don't necessarily always have a separate heater and an air conditioner. They're sometimes combined. Okay. I don't have a picture, but a joist is the horizontal framing member, usually spaced at a regular interval, usually in either the floor joist or it could be a roof joist. If it's above your head, if it's a roof joist, if it's below your feet, it's a floor joist. All right. Knee wall. How many bonus rooms above garages have you seen like this in Georgia? Hundreds probably. And here, this, this roof line, this wall is referred to as a knee wall, which is a short wall on an upper floor that is not regular, not a regular height because the roof plane extends into it. So typically, in fact, I think you can actually see a door handle right here in this right-hand side of this. Typically, you're going to see a little half door, and quite often you'll see storage space behind here where people put their Christmas trees and their Halloween decorations and the like. Great storage area underneath of that roof line. Okay, but that is a knee wall. Okay, stairs. Let's talk about some stair terminology. What is this?
Post.
Also called a newel post. There it is, newel. The support post placed vertically, generally joining sections with railings and balusters. These elements that keep somebody's head from poking through or a child from falling down the stairs are called balusters. And of course, what is this part called? The stair rail.
Rail.
Okay. All right, let's talk about some more stair terminology. Actually, it's not. It's a little bit further down. So this would be a pillar or also a column. Generally, that is supporting weight. So if somebody's thinking about removing a pillar or a column, the obvious question is, somebody put that there for a reason, and it's probably not decorative. It's holding up a significant amount of weight above you in the structure of the home. Okay. This is an example of something called a pony wall, a frame wall that extends a shorter foundation wall to a full height. These are commonly used to split entry homes where the foundation walls are 3 to 4 feet in height, or when a home's foundation is stepped because of a lot condition. So this is kind of an example of a pony wall. In this case, it's just a room divider more than anything, but it's kind of a good example of a pony wall. I do not know how to pronounce this term. Does anybody know?
Coin.
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 Good job. And that is these decorative elements on a brick home that make the stone or stucco trim used as a decorative accent on the exterior corner of a home. Okay. Quite often, you'll find that these are made with synthetic stucco. And we're going to have a much longer conversation about stucco and synthetic stucco here in just a minute. Well, actually, we probably will do that on Thursday. Rafters. These are examples of rafters within a roof, but this is also called a truss system. And this type of construction, what would you call this element of the roof line? Quite often you see this in barn construction. This is post and beam type construction elements. Okay, so it would have a post holding up this and then the beams in the rafters above. And this is quite often used instead of joists within a ceiling system. a roofing system. We're going to talk about slabs when we go out the next time. How many of us have not seen slider type doors, barn doors in homes? These are very popular these days, and you see them everywhere. But this is an example of a slider type door. Okay, love this one. And this is quite often a term that is misused or not characterized correctly. A split level home is a home that has various sections of the floor plan have different floors and different ceiling heights. Okay, so notice that the entryway is at the same level as this level of the home. Notice the plane going across where my cursor is at now. And then clearly, because there's another line above this garage, there's got to be a stairway somewhere within this house that splits that level, and part of it goes up and part of it goes down to this garage, and then part of it else is going to go down to this area living space underneath of this main part of the house. So that is a split level home. Okay, quite often split level homes are confused with split foyer homes. Okay, notice the split foyer has two levels of the home, but the entry door where the foyer is split between the two levels. Does that make sense? So quite often on the inside, this is what you see. You're at one level down here where this picture is taken from, and there's a stairway that goes up and a foyer there, and then a stairway up to the second level. So this is the interior of a split foyer home. This is what a split foyer home looks like from the exterior.
On that previous picture, the windows
Split
there,
level?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's called a daylight basement, right? Instead of a walkout.
this one?
Mm-hmm. No, the other one. On the split level.
So this one here? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, this one.
So you're talking about this basement?
Yes, daylight.
Daylight basement, I think, is a general term that just refers to the fact that the basement gets a lot of light, and it has an area like typically in the back of the house that opens up to its own terrace level.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
I don't know that picture would be one that I would call a daylight basement, but that wouldn't mean that a listing agent wouldn't call it a daylight basement because it's got a lot of bright light that shows in through windows. Okay. Folks, we are already 5 minutes over our typical time. Let me see if there's anything that is just screaming at me, but this is posted for you so that you can review the last couple of pages of this, and then we're going to cover it in much greater detail on Thursday when we go out. I think Tracy mentioned something earlier when I would ask about that Palladium window, about a transom window. This is a true transom window, and that is this part. A transom is that light, that additional windows above a doorway that allows more light to come through. So that is a transom window. Okay. Anybody have any burning, screaming other questions? Was this review? Was there good information here? Anything new that anybody didn't know before?
All of it.
Good stuff.
Okay. So on Thursday, we're going to go into, and it's not going to be just a rehash of this, but we're going to talk about some other elements of a home, the difference between stucco types, the difference between stone countertops and solid surface countertops and synthetic stone countertops. We're going to talk about some different things like how to tell if it's a gas hot water heater, an electric hot water heater, and a myriad of other things that we'll just have to see which house we end up going to, and we'll point out elements and talk about anything and everything under the sun. All right, about home terminology, the burning questions that you've been afraid to ask. But one of the most important things that I can emphasize to you, I didn't learn all of this stuff immediately. There's not one single class that you can go to learn all of this. The most important thing I can tell you is go to your home inspections. Okay? Go to those home inspections. You don't necessarily need to be there for the entire thing, but go for the last 30 minutes to an hour of it. Talk to the home inspectors, ask them questions. They love to educate you. That's their job. All right. And you'll learn more from that experience than you will in any classroom environment that we could ever do. All right. But looking forward to seeing all of your faces, many of your faces on Thursday at 10 o'clock in a yet to be determined location, which I will make sure everybody knows. All right.
We're still going to travel together.
I'm hopeful that we will, but Dwayne let me know that our new van showing vehicle may already be off to be customized by then.
Okay.
If it is, then we'll just have to carpool it or meet at the location. If it's not, then we will meet here and take the new showing vehicle out.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you. Have a great week.
Thank you.
You too.